We could call this next segment To Air or Not to Air. The chilling YouTube video of Elliot Rodger, which he recorded hours before he went on a killing spree near Santa Barbara, California, has been wallpapered across the web and TV for almost 9 days now. But there have been some notable exceptions, some journalists who are ethically opposed to showing his face or saying his name. Anderson Cooper of CNN is one of them.
As you know, I don't believe in saying the person's name or showing the person's picture who committed these things. I think history should not remember that person's name, but should remember the name of your son and all the others who lost their lives.
Anderson told me that he started doing this during his coverage of the Aurora movie theater shooting in 2012. And now Megyn Kelly is doing the same thing on her Fox News show. Two anchors taking a stand even against what the rest of their respective networks are doing. So this raises a big, reliable sources question. Should we, as journalists, be deciding you don't have the right to see and hear this guy? Now, for this segment, my producers and I talked about this issue beforehand, and we decided that we should show Rodger. But it is a fair question. I think we should talk about it here. Are we doing the right thing? So let me bring in two experts with very different opinions on this. Longtime media and politics analyst Jeff Greenfield, who's in Santa Barbara, and Dave Cullen, the author of Columbine. Dave, Jeff, thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
Dave, in all of your television appearances over the past year or so, you have always avoided saying any of these suspects' names, including this past week with this shooting in California. Why do you do that, and why do you think the rest of the media should as well?
Well, because I think, we've had 15 years of what I'm calling the Columbine effect now, of this horror that's going on, and it actually seems to be growing. And we could stop it tomorrow if we wanted to. The answer is simple. It's not easy or even desirable, but if we completely stopped covering these, there was a complete blackout, they would go away. Because these are performances, and if there's no one to perform to, if there's no audience, there's no reason to perform. Now, I'm not proposing to do that. I think that would be a terrible thing. That would be a huge dereliction of duty by the media. But if that's sort of the extreme over here, of completely blackout, and doing nothing is on the opposite side, I think we need to find somewhere in there where we selectively look at ways where we can diminish the killer, we can sort of take away part of the stage and the voice and the reason for doing it without doing significant harm to our duty or to the public understanding.
Jeff, what do you make of this?
I understand the impulse. I think it's an effort somehow to take away from these killers what we think they might want. I think it is ultimately futile because in this day and age, unlike 40 years ago, there are no gatekeepers. 40 years ago, a couple of wire services, television networks, a few newspapers could have effectively have shut this out. You can't do this anymore. If this video, as seen, say, by parents of troubled kids or by law enforcement officers, can stop future killings, that in and of itself is a very important reason why people have to see this. I understand the point about the pornography of violence and the exploitation of it, and I'm sympathetic to what David says. But the most important thing for me is to realize how many clues were missed here, as it often is. And so if somebody out there is seeing this video and saying, you know what, I saw something like this from my own son, you don't want to not have that happen.
Dave, what do you make of that gatekeepers argument? I do think the internet changes the calculus here. I watched all those YouTube videos on my own, no middleman from the media to stop me or to encourage me to do so. What do you make of the idea that the internet changes the calculus?
I think that changes it for the better. That's exactly why I'm for this, because we don't have gatekeepers. I would have a problem in a world if this were 40, 50 years ago, and if you lived in Peoria and the Peoria Journal-Register, I think is the paper there in town, didn't cover it, you would sort of be out of luck. You might be able to get it on TV or something else, but that was sort of your local world. You probably didn't have the New York Times printed in your town. You definitely didn't have the web to go search on it. Now we have a completely different world. So I'm not asking for or advocating any kind of blackout. I'm with you guys on most of what you're saying. I think people should be able to study these people in depth, to watch the videos. I wrote a book and spent 10 years on Columbine and getting the motives. I want their basement tapes that they played that are still not out. I want those available to the public. But because anyone can Google this guy and look at those videos, that video, when I watched it, had already had more than 2 million views. I think that's great and should stay off the web. I think giving him what is sort of viewed still by most people as sort of the glamour of television is unnecessary. I don't think that the clip played at the beginning of the segment showing clips of his face did any public good. I don't think anyone learned anything from it. I think we've all seen him enough times, and there was no audio played with it, so we didn't hear what he was saying. I think that's superfluous and completely unnecessary and gives him the glamour without any kind of value coming from it.
Jeff, should there be a sort of period of time after which time we don't show the video, we don't say the name?
I don't know. Look, I think David makes a good point, and this is one of my problems, if I may be blunt with you, Brian, about cable news in general, which is throwing video up as wallpaper, no matter, you know, just for the sake of filling the camera. But I would make one point, and it may seem a little off, but it struck me. When I was researching for a book I did about Kennedy, I read a lot about Oswald. And the more I read about Oswald, the more compelling the case for his guilt was. To understand his background, his propensity to violence, how he was raised, his delusions of grandeur. Historically, to me, in a country that where most people still think there was a conspiracy, this would be information where even decades after you would want to know. And again, these impulses to try to figure out some way to take away from a killer what we think this killer was after is understandable. I just have some skepticism about whether or not a future madman with guns is going to say, oh, you know what, they're not going to show my picture, so maybe I will stay my hand. I don't think that's the point David was making. I think this is an effort that is widespread to try to figure out some rational way, other than the obvious, like keeping guns out of the hands of madmen and telling mental health professionals that privacy doesn't trump the public safety, some way to prevent a killer from getting what we think he wants. As I say, absolutely a noble gesture. How much it will contribute to future safety, to be honest, I'm a bit skeptical.
Dave, I'm struck by the fact that we've gotten through another television segment and you had a pretty easy time not saying the name. It wasn't something that you accidentally almost did or slipped up or something like that.
Right, and I don't think Jeff said it either. I'm not sure about that. But it's very easy. There's the perpetrator, the suspect, the gunman, anything. And we all sort of know who we're talking about. And I think Jeff and I agreed on that. But the name is completely superfluous. Whether somebody is born with the name Smith or McGillicuddy, that's kind of an arbitrary piece of information which reveals nothing about motive or intent or really background. And that's why I say that part is a no-brainer. And especially because I don't want it to be 100%. I want it to be out there so anyone can Google it and research it and so forth. But the killer still sees that, he's being dissed by most of the media. He's having most of his voice robbed from him and his identity. 100% is not necessary or even desirable. It's taking away most of it from him that will have the impact with those future killers who are watching right now.
I'm glad to have this conversation with both of you. It gets us thinking about these issues. Dave Cullen, Jeff Greenfield, thanks both for being here.
Thank you.